What's up everybody? In this video I wanted to look at Cleanspark and go over a couple of things here. We're going to go over some valuation metrics, we're going to look at the chart, and we're also going to go over this recent news that may negatively affect companies like Cleanspark. So let's take a look. If you don't mind hitting the like, subscribe, ringing the notification bell, I definitely appreciate it. Check out the links down below and let's take a look at Clsk. And first off, some negative news, and I did mention this in my previous video, and I'll give you guys the link down below for that, kind of going into other news that affects crypto as a whole. But this here can definitely negatively affect a company like Cleanspark. And this budget proposes a 30% tax on crypto mining electricity usage. And this tax would be phased in at 10% per year over 3 years and covers electricity generated from on and off-grid sources. And I will show you guys Cleanspark's energy mix in a second here, but it seems with this, it doesn't really make much of a difference because as it said, it's on-grid and off-grid sources. But one positive you can look at is this is, as said by this article, in quotes, subject to an excise tax equal to 30% of the cost of electricity used in digital asset mining. One good thing about Cleanspark is they are mining with very cheap electricity. A majority of their mining comes from Georgia. They also have some other locations, but the fact that their electricity, at least in Georgia, is so cheap, this tax that goes up over time, keep in mind it'll start at 10, go to 20, then 30%. And by the time it's at 30%, we will likely have already seen Bitcoin's peak somewhere around 2025, at least just going off of the halving cycles. But overall for crypto miners, this is definitely not positive news, but it is a good thing that they aren't completely attacking crypto miners. They are proposing a tax, meaning that these crypto miners likely won't be banned. And we kind of have this theme going that the government kind of wants to regulate things, but they also say they don't want to stifle innovation. So we will likely see some negative, at least short-term negative regulations, but over the long term, this can be seen as a positive because it does cement crypto into the US and crypto mining. And one thing I find here that's a little bit contradictory to me at least is this right here. In its reasoning for the tax, the Treasury claimed the energy consumption of crypto mining operations has negative environmental effects. Keep that in mind. And increases prices for those sharing a grid with operations and creates uncertainty and risks to local utilities and communities. One thing we know with Cleanspark at least is if need be, they can actually help the grid out. They can lower their mining consumption, thereby giving more energy to their community. So while yes, it is more pressure on the grid, seeing more miners popping up and seeing more, energy consumption. One thing to think about though, along with that, is it does bring flexibility. So during times of need, these miners can potentially help actually supply the grid or at least lower their consumption. And I will leave this down below for you, but it basically goes over the energy mix for Cleanspark. And you'll notice most of their energy comes from clean sources. They do have a clean energy mix of 94%, whereas carbon-based is 5.7% and 0.28% is undisclosed. But you'll see that a majority of their energy is consumed in Georgia. They also do have energy consumption in their New York facility. But the fact that Georgia is so cheap for energy, over time, seeing an excise tax on that likely won't hurt them all that much since their source is so cheap from the beginning. But what do you think about this potential regulation here? While it is a negative overall, I don't think it ruins crypto mining. Next up, I did want to look over a couple more things on Cleanspark, then we're going to go over the chart. And I did want to show you guys that they are currently at a book value of 0.43. They are currently trading at less than half of their book value. Also, price to sales is under a 1. Typically, a price to sales of around 1 is an extremely good value, and currently Cleanspark is at a 0.96. As most of you know, this company isn't profitable, so we don't have a PE or a forward PE as they don't expect profitability just yet. Now, I did want to show you their balance sheet and add a little bit to it because I'd say it is a little bit misleading here. First off, their debt is 25 million. And it shows that their cash is only 2.7 million. However, they do have Bitcoin holdings as well. And I did want to mention to you guys that we kind of get these mining updates month to month. So you kind of get an idea of how much Bitcoin they're holding and of course how much revenue they're pulling in by selling that Bitcoin. Well, so far what we've seen in this quarter, so far in January and February, they have pulled in a little over 20 million in revenue. And they do have a Bitcoin balance as of their last update of a little over 100. They have been focused on selling their Bitcoin actually. And I'm about to go over what I think their game plan is here. Now we're going to look at the chart here in a second, but I did want to pull up on TradingView what they expect for their next revenue. And this is going to be based on January, February, and March. So they are expecting somewhere around 43 million in revenue. And why I think that's their goal is because of their year over year. I think they want to see, or they want to show, a year-over-year increase in revenue rather than a year-over-year decline. And as I mentioned previously, we did see kind of a pivot finally from revenues going down quarter-over-quarter due to Bitcoin's price to revenues finally actually trending upwards from the previous quarter. You'll see that the last quarter they reported nearly 28 million in revenue, whereas the quarter before that they reported 26. Well, up until this point, we have been seeing revenue decline quarter over quarter over quarter, with their last peak in revenue at 41.6 million. And that's why I think they're looking to try to get this 43 million so they can show year-over-year revenue growth finally. And this will be the first time since around early 2022, late 2021, when Bitcoin was at the very end of its peak. And I do suspect this is kind of the shift here that we're starting to see. We are starting to see them actually come through with higher and higher revenues. And as long as March continues to play in our favor, while yes, we have recently pulled back on Bitcoin, really depends on kind of where it goes throughout the rest of March. We will be getting our mining update at the beginning of April, going over what March was like. But I do suspect they can definitely get this 43 million in revenue. We will likely see that they sold more Bitcoin again than they mined this month, just like in last month in February, where they actually sold more Bitcoin than they mined. And for context, in January, they actually mined more than they sold. Things seem to be looking like they were going to be holding more, but I do think they have a strategy at play here. I do think that's what they want. They want to see a year-over-year increase in revenue and kind of give us that feeling that, okay, things are starting to shift. Of course, it greatly depends on where Bitcoin goes over the coming months to continue to see an increase in revenue, but it will definitely be nice to have a record-breaking quarter with revenue right around 43 million. But as I said, at this point, it really does depend on March and kind of depends on where Bitcoin moves from here, but they have historically been pretty smart with their sells of Bitcoin. And for all we know, they've likely sold a good amount throughout March already, right around the 22 area, you know, something like that. But if Bitcoin does pull back even more throughout March, they might potentially miss their next quarter in revenue, so we might see a year-over-year decline in revenue. Really depends on where the rest of March goes, in my opinion. Now, looking at Cleanspark on the chart, you'll see it was in this broadening pattern. It broke it, and it's been kind of a falling knife ever since. If we do continue to pull, you definitely need to watch this 175 level. This is their low that they established at the end of last year, at the end of 2022. Right now, it's a bit of a falling knife, and if Bitcoin continues down, Cleanspark's definitely going to continue down. One thing to notice is on the day chart here, you'll see that it's flirting with oversold now. We'll see if we see a bounce here or if we dip down into oversold. But it really does depend on Bitcoin, since Cleanspark is tied so close to Bitcoin. Now, looking at Bitcoin, it has definitely been pulling back. We might find 20,000 as a resistance moving forwards, and it's been just coming down and having trouble ever since we broke this ascending pattern here. It attempted to establish support on the 50 EMA, but has been falling since then. One thing I am watching for is a cross of the 50 to the 200. We did see a bullish cross back here in February, and it does look like it's gearing up for a bearish cross, but you definitely want to watch these levels. Could of course bounce, and we could see these EMAs start curling back upwards, and things could be potentially looking better from here on out. But if we do see a bearish cross, we might see more pain ahead. And as for the MA, the moving average, it does seem like it's trying to rest here at the 200. But if it fails this level, we really don't have many other supports until roughly this $18,000 area. But despite Bitcoin's short-term bearishness lately and all the negative news surrounding it, I still personally think it's a great time to get in looking long-term. We are gearing up to be 1 year away from the halving, and we do typically see a good year leading up to the halving. But thanks for watching, guys. How do you feel currently about Cleanspark and Bitcoin? Do you think they're heading lower before we head higher? Do you think they're heading lower indefinitely? Or do you think we're near the bottom and we're about to curl and head higher? Hope you have a good rest of your day and enjoy the weekend.